There are countless movies that emphasize how people should be judged for their actions, not for their appearance. However, things are a little different when it comes to horror. Just because a character looks like a monster doesn't mean they have to act like one. Some wretched critters harbour no ill will towards anyone, while other times they're exploited or controlled and can't be held responsible for their actions. They may be horrifying to look at, but the following so-called monsters aren't as bad as they seem. I'm Sean Ferry for What Culture Horror, and here are 10 horror movies where the monster isn't the villain. Number 10. Frankenstein. Mary Shelley literally wrote the book on the monster is not the villain concept, so it'd be criminal not to include James Whale's film's adaptation. Although 1931's Frankenstein is drastically different from the source material, the core concept is the same. The film and the novel follow eccentric scientist Victor Frankenstein, who successfully reanimates a corpse whose abnormal appearance attracts unwanted attention, which leads to tragedy. Even though the book depicts the creature as sympathetic, there are moments where he's unjustifiably brutal, like when he rips out an innocent woman's heart. Fortunately, this adaptation excludes aspects like this and focuses more on the creature's childlike innocence. Sure, the bolt-necked monster performs a few murders, but it's never out of malice. For example, he throttles a doctor for trying to vivisect him and hangs Frankenstein's assistant after he viciously beat him. Then there's the infamous pond scene where, while throwing flowers into a pond with a young Maria, the creature notices the petals floating. Believing Maria will float too, he chucks her into the water, inadvertently drowning her. Yes, he committed a horrible act, but his intentions weren't evil. If the creature was raised with kindness instead of fear, these atrocities could have been avoided. Number 9. Apostle. In this Wicker Man-inspired Netflix exclusive, ex-missionary Thomas Richardson learns his sister has been kidnapped by a cult. Thomas visits the island where the commune resides and poses as a convert, hoping to retrieve his sibling. While there, Thomas learns from the leader, Malcolm Howe, that the island was devoid of life before being fertilized by a powerful being called the Goddess. Since the cultists slaughter animals and drill holes in people's skulls, all signs are pointing to the Goddess being bad news. As such, Thomas is intent with killing the so-called deity, since she's the source of the Zealot's power. But when he finally locates the Goddess, Thomas learns the cult has imprisoned her and have been sapping her power for their own needs. Although her divinity is fueled by sacrifices, Thomas sees the Goddess has been force-fed blood against her will, proving she's not aligned with Malcolm or his people. Knowing she'll continue to pose a threat so long as she's alive, the Goddess orders Thomas to kill her. She willingly accepts her fate, smiling as Thomas incinerates her to death. Number 8. Before I Wake. Mike Flanagan's fantasy horror Before I Wake centers around an orphan, Cody, who can manifest his dreams into reality. When his foster parents, Jesse and Mark, learn about Cody's powers, they initially see it as a blessing. Soon after, Cody manifests a skeletal creature called the Cankerman, who torments Cody, saying it will never leave him. When the Cankerman kills several people, including Mark, Jesse becomes convinced the child means her harm. After investigating Cody's past, Jesse learns his mother died of cancer when he was a toddler, leaving him traumatized. The last time Cody saw her, she said, "I am always with you," while looking deathly ill. Unable to process what was happening, Cody's subconscious created a nightmarish monster based on this phrase and his mother's disfigured appearance. Jesse realizes the name Cankerman is derived from the word cancer, which Cody misheard during this period. Despite the Cankerman's horrible actions, it was only trying to keep Cody safe. But after discovering the truth behind this nightmarish entity, Cody is able to overcome his grief, causing the Cankerman to disappear. Number 7. Stir of Echoes. Based on Richard Matheson's novel of the same name, Stir of Echoes revolves around supernatural skeptic Tom. When he dismisses his sister-in-law for believing in ghosts, she hypnotizes him, allowing him to detect paranormal. Soon after, Tom has haunting visions of a 17-year-old girl named Samantha, who plagues him with cryptic warnings. When the phantom urges him to dig, he spends all day tearing up his backyard. Tom spends so much time trying to appease the spirit, he begins to neglect his wife and son. For the longest time, it looks like the ghost's sole purpose is to drive Tom insane, but when Tom discovers Samantha's mummified remains during the dig, a series of flashbacks reveals the truth. Just before Tom moved into his house, his landlord's sons lured Samantha into the building and murdered her after she rejected their advances. Unable to move on, her ghost lingered in the house ever since, hoping Tom would avenge her. Since Samantha was intellectually impaired, she had difficulty articulating herself, which is why her pleas to Tom came across as threats. After Samantha's murderers are killed, she disappears, indicating her spirit is finally at rest. Number 6. Sleepy Hollow. In Tim Burton's adaptation of Washington Irving's Gothic tale, quirky Constable Ichabod Crane is tasked with finding a murderer in Sleepy Hollow who has a nasty habit of lopping off heads. Over time, Ichabod discovers the murders have been carried out by a headless phantom on a horseback. At first, it's easy to believe the Headless Horseman is evil incarnate, since he's decapitating locals like he's got bills to pay. Because he was considered the most bloodthirsty mercenary while he was alive, there's no reason to doubt he's the main villain, and the fact he's portrayed by Christopher Walken solidifies this theory further. But after encountering the Horseman, Ichabod notices the dark spirit is only targeting specific people. Even when the townsfolk attack him, the decapitated fiend goes out of his way not to kill them unless they give him no other choice. Through his research, Ichabod learns a Satanist, Lady Von Tassel, is in possession of the Horseman's head, which she uses to control him. When the Horseman requires his noggin, he instantly ends his murder spree and willingly returns to hell, taking Lady Von Tassel with him. Number 5. Trick or Treat. In Michael Dougherty's Halloween anthology, the town of Warren Valley is home to ghosts, werewolves, and a pumpkin-faced spirit named Sam. On the surface, these dark fiends should be villains, since they torment, hunt, and kill anyone who crosses their path. However, it's sort of impossible not to root for this horrid bunch, since every person they slaughter kinda had it coming. Except the woman in the opening, she got a raw deal. Sam tortures a curmudgeon, Krieg, seemingly because he doesn't like Halloween. Even though Krieg is a grump, his punishment does seem a tad overkill. But after it's revealed Krieg drove a bus full of children into a quarry to drown them, any sympathy for him dries up in an instant. Elsewhere, when a horde of bloodthirsty werewolves rip apart a child murderer, all viewers see is a scumbag getting his well-earned comeuppance. And after a group of trick-or-treaters play a cruel joke on a kid who's implied to have learning difficulties, it kind of feels like pure karma when they're abandoned and left at the mercy of the undead. The supernatural creatures in Trick or Treat may be monsters, but their victims were so much worse. Number 4. The Fly, Part 2. In David Cronenberg's The Fly, Seth Brundle urged his partner to kill him after a teleporting accident transformed him into a fly monster. The Fly 2 revolves around his son, Martin, who shares his father's hybrid DNA. Though Martin appears ordinary at first, his fly genes make him age rapidly, causing him to reach adulthood before his 5th birthday. When he's shown to have superhuman intelligence, he's adopted by Anton Bartok, who financed Seth's teleportation experiments. Unable to replicate Seth's work himself, Bartok hopes Martin will figure it out. Even though Martin sees Bartok as family, the feeling isn't mutual. When Martin starts turning into a fly, Bartok confesses he's no intention of curing him. Once the telepod is operational, Bartok is prepared to sell Martin to a genetics corporation where he'll be experimented on to his dying day. So when Martin finally metamorphoses into a fly beast and begins crushing skulls and melting faces, you can't really blame him. Despite his horrific appearance, there's no doubt Martin is the hero. It's also deeply satisfying when Martin successfully transfers his fly DNA to Bartok, turning him into an abominable beast, though Bartok was a monster long before he ever looked like one. Number 3. I Am Legend alternate ending. I Am Legend centers around a re-engineered virus that turns most of humanity into vampiric creatures known as Darkseekers. Every day, scientist Robert Neville performs experiments, hoping to find a cure. Going by the theatrical cut, Neville is a textbook hero, going so far as to sacrifice himself to save a woman and her child he barely knows. However, the alternate ending of the movie paints a very different picture, as the final scene features a horde of Darkseekers bursting into Neville's lab, seemingly to kill him. Here, Neville realizes the Alpha is only there to rescue his mate, who Neville experimented on to find the cure. After returning her, the Darkseekers head back to their den. In that moment, Neville understands the Darkseekers have been victims this entire time and only wanted to live in peace. As he looks at photos of his former test subjects, Neville realizes he hadn't been experimenting on mindless monsters, but compassionate and intelligent human beings. Number 2. Nightbreed. After the success of Hellraiser, Clive Barker adapted another one of his books, which led to the gothic thriller Nightbreed. The story opens with a troubled man, Boone, who has recurring nightmares of an underground city called Midian. After venturing to the local cemetery, Boone's confronted by disfigured creatures known as the Nightbreed, who originated from this very place. Based on their ugly mugs, Boone naturally assumes the Nightbreed are hostile, and when one of the creeps takes a big bite out of his shoulder, his suspicions seem verified. But after the Nightbreed brings Boone to their home, he learns they are far from evil. They may be aggressive, but it's pretty justified since they've been cast out of human society. Despite their best efforts to live in peace, trouble always finds the Nightbreed, especially after Midian is discovered by Boone's deranged psychotherapist, Decker. Desperate to learn about this secret realm, Decker encourages the police force to lay siege to Midian and wipe the Nightbreed off the face of the earth. The Nightbreed look like monsters, but they're among the only characters in the film who don't act like villains. Number 1. Shutter. It may look like a ripoff of The Ring or The Grudge at a glance, but Shutter has plenty of innovation to offer. This Thai indie follows photographer Tun, who's tormented by a female ghost. After encountering the spectre, Tun starts feeling unbearable tension in his neck, which significantly affects his posture. When his old college buddies start dying, Tun suspects the ghost is to blame, though Tun can't understand why he and his friends are being targeted. Over time, the ghost is revealed to be Nater, a shy girl that Tun dated in college. One night, Tun's friends pressured him to take photos of them sexually assaulting her, which he reluctantly agreed to. Humiliated and heartbroken, Nater took her own life and was reborn as a vengeful spirit. In that moment, it's clear Nater isn't a monster, but a victim. And that's not all. After taking a picture of himself, Tun sees Nater in the photograph sitting on his shoulders, which explains why he's been suffering immeasurable tension recently. The shock of this revelation causes Tun to fall out of a window, leaving him in a catatonic state. In the last shot, Nater can be seen resting on Tun's shoulders, indicating she'll continue to weigh his body down until the day he dies. It may be agonizing punishment, but Tun totally deserved it after what he did to the poor girl.